at the forefront of politics.
Our enemy is Trump. He is the enemy. We got to unite. If we're not a united party, we lose to Trump.
On the front lines of activism.
There's certain fights, if we don't engage, they win. This is a fundamental question of who we are.
And delivering your daily dose of comedy.
Donald Trump, when he had his physical, they had his blood pressure, and mine is higher than his. Oh. And the irony is mine is higher because of him.
From the blue wave.
We flipped enough seats to take control of the House. We control the House.
To 2020 and beyond. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters. Friday, August 2nd. We are live for the next 3 hours. I'm Dean Obeidallah, hoping to be your MBFF. Even over the weekend, I am there for you because I'm needy, but I'm also there for you. I'm on Twitter at Dean Obeidallah. Drop me an email, dean@deanofradio.com. Or tomorrow, if all goes well, I'll be on Joy Reid Show. You should always watch Joy Reid Show, but I hope you check it out tomorrow. I'll be on unless some huge, crazy breaking news happens overnight. I'll be on like in the 10 o'clock a.m. hour, near the end of that hour into the early part of 11. So a lot of issues to cover, some big issues. But first, a quick joke by Colbert, which I thought makes a great point last night on what the networks are really about, why they pit people against each other, and what the hell were the Democrats doing. Here's clip number one.
Here's the deal. Networks have a vested interest in getting the candidates to fight with each other for the drama. So frontrunners stand up there and get brutally horsewhipped for hours, while the man Democrats really want them to attack Donald Trump is barely mentioned. But you know who has the courage to talk about Donald Trump? Donald Trump.
Absolutely. Donald Trump talks about himself all the time. And I wish it was good. I wish it was positive, but it's never good. Yesterday, by the way, this didn't get much coverage. He was asked about Russia attacking us, and then Mueller had testified about that, and he literally said, "You don't believe that, do you?" Moscow Mitch and treasonous Trump. Or should it be Moscow Mitch and traitor Trump? Sort of like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. In any event, it is not good for either. And what did Donald Trump do start off today? And this is really, in the big picture, this is beyond a tweet. So forgive me for the tweet part here that Trump said. I want to get into that, but I want to broaden this out and why this matters. And why it matters from a point of view of the GOP and why it matters to the United States of America overall. Donald Trump today began his day by attacking Congressman Cummings again. But this time, because Congressman Cummings, Elijah Cummings, house in Baltimore, was robbed. Now, according to the police report, it was robbed a few hours before Donald Trump's first tweet attacking him, which sounds suspicious, I know. But in any event, it was robbed. So what does Trump do today? He tweets, "Really bad news, exclamation point. The Baltimore house of Elijah Cummings was robbed. Too bad, exclamation point." Trump is a racist jackass. To taunt someone who got robbed is insane. I mean, on some level, Donald Trump is celebrating crime. He's the first pro-crime president. But if you think about it in the big picture, took a step back for a second, this was a crime that happened in Trump's America. Trump's America is so unsafe, crime is so bad that members of Congress, their homes are not even safe. Trump should not be happy about this. It's more of a slap in the face. It just shows more of his failures. And what's sadder in the big picture is that if you're on Twitter, you know what this means. If you're not, then if you tweet something, people can retweet it or they can click like that they like it. When Trump attacks African Americans, in a sense, putting them down for being uppity, and that's really what he does, those tweets get the most likes of anything for Trump. And on some level, when Trump is attacking leading African Americans, be it Congressman Cummings, Maxine Waters, Don Lemon, whoever, on some level, this is the modern day Jim Crow mentality. Because Donald Trump can't help the economically struggling white people in his base. But by attacking black people with racism and brown people with racism, he can make them feel a little bit better about themselves. And that was the essence, as we all know, the genesis of Jim Crow. That's what the white elite were doing. They were fearful of black and white people who were poor and struggling, coming together to unite. So they divided them by using racism and Jim Crow. So they felt slightly better about themselves, the white people who were economically struggling. But here's the truth, folks. This actually matters. Donald Trump's attack on Congressman Cummings, Congressman Waters, African Americans left and right, send her back, attacking the 4 women of color, on my mind, no doubt contributed to last night Congressman Will Hurd, a Republican from Texas, saying he's retiring. Will Hurd, out of 430 members, 35 members in the House of Representatives, out of 435, he is the only black Republican, and he's leaving. He's had enough. Now, he didn't slam Trump by name in his statement. He did say a couple of lines here, which I think indicate there could be something about what's going on with his party. He said, quote, "I will stay involved in politics to grow a Republican Party that looks like America. Every American should feel they have a home in our party." Clearly they don't, but this is what he's saying in the statement. And Donald Trump is trying to make the GOP a whites party only. And his administration looks like that as well. And I want to get into a little of the history of the Republican Party because it's very relevant to what's going on here, especially because we have new clips from Ronald Reagan being openly racist, which we didn't have time to cover earlier in the week, but it's extremely important that we see the direct line from really Barry Goldwater in 1964, the Republican nominee, but especially Richard Nixon, through Donald Trump, and how the GOP has long courted racism, that it's been a party of white supremacy and white victimhood under different names, under different ways of framing it. Now, in 1964, when LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act, there's a quote that's attributed to him that he said, "We've lost the South for generations." He actually didn't say that. What he did say to Bill Moyers, his aide at the time, he said, "I think we just delivered the South to the Republican Party for a long time to come." That's his real quote. And he did. That was right. LBJ said when he signed the Civil Rights Act, he looked a little despondent. Bill Moyers, who we all know from TV, was his aide and said to him, "I think we have just delivered the South to the Republican Party for a long time to come." And he was right, because when was the last time a Democratic presidential candidate won the white vote in this country? Some of you know the answer, some don't. A little game show here. When do you think the last time a Democratic candidate for president won a majority of the white vote? The answer, 1964. LBJ was absolutely right. We delivered the South to the Republican Party for not a long time, but forever at this point. And it looks like no chance of changing. So in 1964, he wins big. He crushes Barry Goldwater. But this is where the seeds of the Southern strategy was really were planted with Barry Goldwater in 64, the Republican nominee. Now, Goldwater got crushed. You know, LBJ was coming in after JFK was just killed. A lot of sympathy. And America voted overwhelmingly for LBJ. And he wins the white vote there. But you had Barry Goldwater running an openly, I'm not going to say openly racist, but openly trying to get white voters who are upset with civil rights to come over. And he had a thing called Operation Dixie, and literally called it Operation Dixie, and try to be aggressive in championing what he calls states' rights to fight against the Civil Rights Act of 64. Doesn't work, gets crushed. In 65, you have the Voting Rights Act, which is not talked about enough as playing into this white victimhood and white fear and white anxiety and white racism and white supremacy, all of that intertwined together. So it's both the Civil Rights Act of 64 and then the Voting Rights of 65, which empowers African Americans to vote. And don't forget, there were black people who were literally killed simply trying to register to vote and vote. So for them to have for there to be a federal law passed which enshrined the right of black people to vote was stunning. It sent an earthquake through the white supremacist hierarchy that we have. And so 68 comes when Richard Nixon here really uses what we know the Southern strategy. And Southern strategy is just simply dog whistle politics. It's playing on white fear, white anxiety, and doing it in a coded way. It was different than Operation Dixie of Barry Goldwater, obviously. Using Operation Dixie in the title, boom, you're not playing anything. Nixon goes, let's be more subtle. In fact, Lee Atwater, who many of you know, he was the famous sort of the operator of dark nights of politics. He died years ago, but he was important in the GOP. And he had a famous quote, and I'll just say N-word instead of him saying the actual word in an interview, explaining in the 80s what they did in the GOP. He said, you start out in 1954 by saying N-word, N-word, N-word. By 1968, you can't say N-word. That hurts you, backfires. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff, and you're getting so abstract. Now you're talking about cutting taxes, and all these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and a byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. So the idea is no more N-word. You use Southern strategy. You use subtle dog whistles, code, states' rights, forced busing. 68, Nixon uses this very effectively. He wins the election. He plays on America, the white America's fear of a changing nation, a nation changing in all different ways, racially, that black people are being able to vote now. Don't forget, 68 is 3 years after the Voting Rights Act. You have black people voting in big numbers. It's scaring the heck out of many, many white people. So then we get to 1971. And here is the new audio released this week from the National Archives. They, for 20 years, would not release this because they were protecting Ronald Reagan's privacy. 1971, Ronald Reagan is the governor of California. Richard Nixon is president. Ronald Reagan calls up Richard Nixon in 1971. We're going to play the actual audio here. And I'm going to have Chris Hayes, because he played on his show on MSNBC last night, set the clip up slightly so you can hear the context of what led to this. The audio is a little grainy. Afterwards, I'll read you the words of what is said. But here, let's hear clip number 2.
Was opposed by the Nixon administration, who wanted to keep their ally Taiwan in the United Nations and keep communist China out. Well, after furious lobbying, the U.S. lost that vote, which is a huge deal, covered wall-to-wall on network television. Among the images shown were celebrations in the UN General Assembly from countries that supported China over Taiwan. And that was apparently enough to enrage none other than Ronald Reagan, then the governor of California, who picked up the phone to give President Richard Nixon some incredibly offensive thoughts.
And last night, I tell you, to watch that thing on television was that did. Yeah. To see those monkeys from those African countries. And they're still uncomfortable wearing shoes.
Well, and then the tail wags the dog there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The tail wags the dog.
So what he said, and it's grainy, but I want to play the real audio for you. He said he saw the delegates from African countries there. He called them monkeys, his exact words. And he mocked them, saying they are not even used to wearing shoes. And Richard Nixon is laughing, guffawing how funny it is. And then Richard Nixon, as Chris Hayes played, called his Secretary of State to talk about what Reagan said. And in this, Richard Nixon calls the black people he saw cannibals. And I'll play that. This is much more clear, this audio. Here's clip number 3.
I, for example, just had a call from Reagan, California, and he's been out there and so forth, and as you can imagine, there's strong feeling that we just shouldn't. As he said, he saw these cannibals on television last night, and he said they weren't even wearing shoes, and he says here the United States is going to submit its fate to that, and so forth and so on, but that's typical of a reaction, which is probably quite strong.
So there you have the man in the White House calling black people cannibals and laughing at the reference from the California governor, Ronald Reagan, 1971, that black people were monkeys. They've been racist. They've always been racist. They hide it. They hid it with the Southern strategy. They use dog whistle politics. But when Ronald Reagan is calling black people monkeys, then it confirms all the dog whistle politics that people could debate over time and say, oh, no, there was no Southern strategy. So when Ronald Reagan kicked off his campaign for president in 1980 in Philadelphia, Mississippi, and talked about states' rights, it was racist. It was playing on racism because Philadelphia, Mississippi is where, if you saw the movie Mississippi Burning, where the 3 voting rights activists were killed, the 2 Jewish Americans and the young black American who were killed, Cheney and Schwarmer, were killed there. He could have picked anywhere in the country. He picked there. When Ronald Reagan, as president, said, welfare queens driving a Cadillac. When Reagan talked about that the Civil Rights Act was an embarrassment, the Voting Rights Act caused embarrassment to the South. Embarrassment. They were humiliated. That's what he said. It's all about racism. When George Herbert Walker Bush ran the Willie Horton ad, Lee Atwater put together, you know exactly what they're doing. Now, I don't know if George Herbert Walker Bush was a racist like Reagan and Nixon, but listen to them just laughing. And we come forward to Donald Trump today, who no longer has to call on the phone and joke around when he's saying things about black people being dumb or unintelligent or stupid. I mean, he's one step from calling black people monkeys. I mean, let's be blunt. He's calling them dumb, unintelligent, low IQ. This is Donald Trump. So it's no longer Southern strategy. It's Twitter strategy. It's right in your face. And his base loves it. And I want to make it clear. It's not just about the rhetoric of Donald Trump. It's not just the tweets, the demeaning black and brown people. It's also in what he's doing in his administration. And this is getting so little coverage. And I'm writing about it for the Daily Beast. And on Monday, I will share the article. It'll be published, if all goes well, as planned. And I'll share it here. Here is the real world of what Donald Trump is doing. Because calling black people derogatory names, demeaning them as dumb, unintelligent, low IQ, dumbest man in the world, over and over and over, is having an impact on who he's putting in his administration. and in very, very key positions. And this just backs up. It's beyond rhetoric. It shows you the white supremacist that Donald Trump is. Let's talk about first the cabinet. 17 people come to cabinet meetings. How many are black of that 17? 1, Ben Carson. Senior advisors. How many black senior advisors does Donald Trump have? Per CNN in August 2018, the answer is 0. Omarosa was the only one she's left. In fact, in March of this year, Katrina Pearson, who you all know from the campaign as a spokesperson, she doesn't work in the White House. She's a 2020 campaign strategist, was on with Reverend Al, and Reverend Al said to her, how come there's no black people in the West Wing? Can't you name them? And here's the exchange. Here's clip number 5.
Is it not a striking absence, if even Katrina can't answer, a black working in the West Wing right now, yet they want to appeal for black votes?
There's plenty of black people working in the West Wing.
Well, I asked you to name them, and you started telling me that
Because I'm not going to participate in the attempt to make this all about race. It's ridiculous. How many black people were in Abraham Lincoln's West Wing? It's
first
absurd
of all,
even to go
if
that
you got to
direction.
go back to Abe Lincoln, you really need to shop it.
That's my point.
George
My point
Bush.
is, was Abraham Lincoln a racist
George
because he
Bush,
didn't
you
have
see,
a black person in the West Wing?
How many black people worked for Abe Lincoln during the time of slavery? This is Katrina Pearson. She's an official surrogate for Trump. She was on TV in 2015, 2016. I debated her on CNN countless times during that campaign. And she's part of the 2020 campaign. And she's black. And she's going, well, who? Well, I can't name any black people there, but doesn't mean Trump is racist. But let's go beyond that. Let's go to real things that truly, truly matter. Because optics do matter. Seeing people that look like you in a White House gives you confidence that maybe people from your community are there at the table. Because we all know the expression, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Every minority knows that expression. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So let's talk about things like the judiciary, because this is really important. This is lifetime appointments. How many judges let me put it this way first. There's 150 Trump nominees to be judges. How many have been black? 3 out of 150. 41 Court of Appeals judges. That's the mid-level Court of Appeals. That's the stepping stone to become the Supreme Court. Out of the 41 Court of Appeals judges that Donald Trump has nominated, how many do you think were black or Hispanic together, combined? Black and Hispanic combined of those 41. The answer is 0. How many black women has Donald Trump nominated to the federal courts? 0. In fact, out of all the federal judges that Donald Trump's nominated, 2% have been black, 2% are Hispanic. When in reality, population about 13% African American, about 17% Hispanic. And to give you a contrast, President Obama, 27% of his circuit court appointees were either black or Hispanic. 27% were black or Hispanic. Trump, 0%. Even George Bush, 15% were black or Hispanic. Trump, 0. Let's talk about U.S. ambassadors. According to Foreign Policy Magazine, September 2018, 119 ambassadors Trump has nominated. 119. What percents do you think have been white? Did you guess 92%? Because America's 92% white, isn't it? It's not even close. About 70%. 4% Hispanic. How many black women has he nominated to be ambassadors? 0. Under Obama, 24 African American women were ambassadors. You get the idea here. It's not just words. It's not just demeaning Elijah Cummings, Maxine Waters, Don Lemon, Jay-Z, and the list goes on of African Americans. For him, black people are props, or he handpicks a few celebrities that he can talk about. But in reality, they're not in his administration. They're not in his cabinet. They're not in the federal court. They're not his ambassadors. He doesn't want them around because he is a white supremacist. He wants white people around. That's what he wants. When you have a cabinet of 17 people, for 17 cabinet people come to the meeting, 17 people come to the cabinet meeting, including chief of staff. 17, 1 black, 0 Latino, 0 Hispanic. Come on. This is not 1950s. 2019, 0 Hispanic, 1 black. Look at these numbers, folks. From the courts to ambassadors to senior advisors at 0 to cabinet meetings. This is a man who is a dyed-in-the-wool white supremacist. He is like Reagan. He is like Nixon. He's a racist. The difference is he's showing us he's a racist. He's not even using coded language. Yet people call here and go, where's Donald Trump a racist? I'm not going to explain it to you. It is August 2nd, 2019. If you do not know, if you don't understand he's a racist, then you've got some real soul searching to do as a person. And again, when they did the center back chant, the poll showed last week about 70% of Democrats and independents thought it was racist. Only about 20% of Republicans, meaning 80% of Republicans were fine with it. What can I say to them? And here's the bigger thing. How do we build coalitions with people that have this worldview where blacks and brown people could be demeaned and belittled and ridiculed? Are we supposed to meet them halfway on bigotry and racism? Because I'm not. I don't think you are either. So we have to destroy Donald Trump in 2020. We have to destroy the Republican Party for the good of this country. There should be another party. I had Governor Jay Inslee on last night in the third hour who made this point as well. There should be a party that competes with us on policy, not on racism and bigotry. We should not debate, though. That should be gone. And that's where we are right now. So I don't know how the GOP goes away. I wish a new party would emerge, the Never Trumpers and other good people who are conservative and will fight it out on issues every day. But this is stunning where we are as a nation right now. Donald Trump has made the GOP increasingly the whites-only party. When the last black man, the black person, man or woman, the last black person in the House of Representatives announced last night he's leaving. That leaves one Republican who's black in either chamber, Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina. That's it. That's the GOP, a whites-only party. I hope you're proud of yourself, Republicans. That's your party now. How is it not called a hate group? How is it not considered a white supremacist movement? How is it not the political version of the Klan? It's like the political arm of the Klan is the GOP today. And I say that not being hyperbolic. I'm saying literally, there's no cross-burning. There's not the violence of the Klan. It's like the political wing. Like the IRA in Ireland was a violent organization, but had a political wing. Hamas in Gaza has a terrorist wing, and so it got a political wing. The GOP is like the political wing of the Klan and of white supremacists. It tries to enact through words and through policy the same vision, stopping immigration, white first, not America first, it's white first, and that's where we are. So I'd love to hear from you. You're my guest right at the top of the hour. We got Tom Hartman joining us at the top of the hour for a little bit, then we'll take a lot of calls. Third hour is our What Just Happened segment. We'll have some fun. We'll try to have some fun, I promise. In that segment, 866-997-4748. Give me a call. I'd love to hear from you. Be right back. Progressive values are the best of American values, and we need to keep fighting for them to save our country.